The War in Heaven 3, Pandaemonium. Eons passed and the tide of war definitively became favorable to the gods. Humans remained in primitive social relations. Sure, there were the occasional kingdoms, but generally it was the humans as hunter-gatherers, the orcs as marauders, and the strongest of the goblinoids barely acting as warlords. Halflings stuck to their obscenas, while their riverfolk were confined to their marshes. Dwarves were obsessed with their cats and their crafts, and gnomes with their narcotics. Only the elves acted in a world historic way. They were split into 4 groups connected to the moons: the Maidar, blood elves, beholden to Silvise; the Olvar, lunar elves, beholden to the Wanderer; the Adar, Terran elves, beholden to Artio; and the Alfar, dark elves, beholden to Aoife. We could call these people ancient elves, though strictly speaking, this word only refers to a subset of the blood elves of the First and Second Age. Like all elves, the ancient elves had an obsession with the arcane, the occult, and the esoteric, due to Silvise's relationship with Virgo, a connection to the black dungeons and fairy realms other races do not have, as their counterparts largely led those worlds, a connection to the flora and fauna created by the divine, as one of the original races of mortals they helped craft them, a sense of superiority and arrogance, perhaps not undeserved, a sense of gracefulness, being literally born from the blood of Silvise, a burning desire to experience emotions in the extreme. In fact, their marriages consisted of a masculine male, masculine female, feminine female, feminine male, longevity to the point of immortality, but cursed with frailness, and a penchant for the sacrifice of mortals. Who does not feel this desire? You may think your religion and your society are beyond that, but listen closer. Though there was still war, and by no means was victory secure, recent victories in fortuitous astrology afforded the elves some breathing room. They constructed empires, they launched planetary wars that spanned planets, they performed archaeology that found the laboratories of the aliens buried deep in the underworld. They discovered much of mathematics. They enhanced alchemy. They created many alphabets. It was this time that many heroes lived and fought in many brave wars. In fact, the social organization of the elves became so powerful the minor states could, when acting in unison, match the power of a millennial dragon. The more powerful ones were akin to deities. Oh, to have been king back then. However, the elves preferred to rule others through proxy, as the day-to-day of kingdom management became uninteresting to them who ruled stars and controlled space trade. They were the ultimate rulers, but under them, kingdoms could form in war, so long as they remembered which lord they served. The elves were not unified, not even on Cristo, a planet which is 306,000 miles in circumference, was there a planet-wide ancient elf kingdom. During this phase of the Satya Yuga, the Nephilim still had their own powerful kingdoms that the elves would sometimes war with, sometimes submit to. The gods worried themselves with the mortals abandoning them and twisting their dogmas. The gods were right to fear the elves, for these empires and blasphemies were nothing compared to what the ancient elves would wrought during the Silver Age. But the gods had no mechanism to deal with this. So, they initiated the meeting of Faust, which was the capital of Jumala's domain in the Imperia. The Copts were represented by their priests, who with great difficulty and high numbers could commune with the Duat. The favored archangel of Jumala, Lucifer, who was a student of Anas and well versed in the thought of the desecrator, interjected by proposing a new policy. Lucifer flatly stated that there should be a committee devoted to ensuring zealotry amongst the populace. It was not for a specific god, and favored no interpretation of religion over any other, but simply would squash any doubts among the believers. It was a specifically anti-atheist force, and so the gods from Anahita to Gichimanitau formed a united front. The gods were hesitant to agree for a number of reasons. Firstly, the gods took a hands-off approach to their worshippers. Theological debates were to run rampant amongst followers, resolved only to the lucky few at their canonization. Second, Lucifer did not choose zealots, but doubters. Lucifer proposed he take from those who did not truly love or care for the gods, but found religion to be socially and magically useful. Eventually, the gods relented, and seeing that there was a virtue to this impartiality, this committee's attitude became any religion, so long as it is a religion. Soon, it was discovered that Lucifer and his minions were going beyond what they implied. They were bargaining. They offered mortals great material and magical prizes, political gains, and so forth, as long as they promised their soul to Lucifer and his ilk. Lucifer was not simply using this force to promote religion, but to serve as his own army. It was all completely legal, and the gods were forced to automatically recognize this as a valid conversion. The gods went to destroy Lucifer and ransack Jumala's domain, but before they did, Lucifer shouted, "Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven." Anas came to Lucifer's side, arguing that while they were tricked, nothing Lucifer did was technically outside the agreements of the Faust Pact, of which the contracts with mortals are made, and of course such contracts could only be written by Lucifer and his underlings. Though it was obvious that the other gods grew to resent him and would destroy this fallen angel the first chance they had. But, as Anas said, read the fine print. Lucifer, acting quickly, initiated some events that led to the time of the reckoning. He focused on the heart of Tartarus, slightly refining it from afar, until he cast off a pure shard of evil, and with it he performed some ritual that he claimed would make this shard a physical extension of law itself. He stuck the shard on the middle rod of his pitchfork, and learned the powers of evil greater than any other, save the unknown god. He befriended the illusionist god Mara, half-brother of Hiron, and the Trasgo god Miligarn, half-brother of Thrunch, enticing them with his wicked and vile ways. He whispered in the ears of Lycaer and Aoife, corrupting their essence with ill thoughts. He showed Aoife visions of the 579th layer of the abyss, Godun, which was riddled with spiders and untold powers. Aoife became corrupted and attacked her lovers, destroying the Saren, and had her elves attack the other elves. Artio, the Wanderer, and Sylvise all fought against her, banishing her from the Pantheon, and she retreated into Godun. The Wanderer left his elves. Some say he still walks with Kunirama, others say that he is dead, but regardless, he is no longer a god. The ancestors of the lunar elves became filled with a sense of existential dread. They had a sense of meaninglessness about them for generations. Eventually, many would adopt new gods, the Terran elves of what is now Barat, who were plagued by Mara, and the Terran elves of the Bloodlands abandoned Sylvise. The rate of passage of a second in the Materium to the passage of a second in the Imperia is a strange and complicated equation, with many variables related to one another in many ways. Lucifer wisely chose conditions such that hundreds of years in the Materium would occur simultaneously to a few days in heaven. Lycaer desired the throne of Siddiq, but hated Lucifer, so he refused to join him. But he did believe the visions that Lucifer fed him, of his Lazud ruling over the lands, of decimating the silver dwarves of his upstart father. Footnote on Lazud. At this time, this was a name for the dwarves beholden to Lycaer. Today, it is the name of a race. End footnote. So, he devised a plan so that his Lazud would ally with the Alfar. After 50 years, this treachery saw its fruition. With the help of the Lazud, the Alfar snuck in and slaughtered many silver dwarves. The Lazud themselves kidnapped the silver dwarves and left them outside a layer of Alsaeans, who were hiding in the underworld of Cristo. The Alsaeans, who had acquired some of Lucifer's shard and injected it into their brood, took the silver dwarves and put them in a breeding program of sorts, managing to compensate the strange dwarf breeding ritual with the human action of sex, creating the insane race of the Darrow. Eventually, one of the Mad Darrow, known as the Delathon, fled from his enslavers by jumping into a portal that led to the abyss. Only I, Tom K., know what happened next. Sun Tzu went to the abyss, disguised as an owlbear, and anointed him with the divine essence of a god who was slain during the reckoning, elevating him from god to Darrow. This mad god came back and freed his insane race, who still lurk in the underworld. Of course, very few are aware of the origin of the Delathon or the Darrow. The Zuru, especially Shakas Wedas, were totally shaken by this. Siddiq, after crying, came up with blueprints to create a new race of dwarves, crafted from iron. Sarek immediately left the Pantheon and became the patron god of exiled iron dwarves. Lycaer was totally hated. Traitor, he was called, and his alchemical race and the Iron Dwarves soon became the most bitter, the most hateful of enemies. In the Imperia, all of this occurred within days, and in this confusion Milligard broke with the Trasgo and pledged his allegiance to Lucifer. The gods were going through a trauma never felt before, and Jumala now suspected his once favored servant. Solemnly, with sadness in his heart, he went to Lucifer's castle, and at his chambers he saw Lucifer performing an ancient and primeval ritual. Jumala begged and pleaded for Lucifer to confess, to seek forgiveness, then started to damn his once high priest. The entire time Lucifer ignored him, continuing on with his rites. Jumala said he gave him no choice, and went to kill Lucifer. Calculating Lucifer turned around, smiled, and spoke Jumala's true name as he stabbed him with his pitchfork, totally wiping away Jumala from history so that he never existed, not in this universe or in any other in this reality. He did not even leave behind a palinopsion. Half memories and foggy thoughts remain, and history was rewritten. Lucifer's curse did not just rewrite history, he ensured that, when it came to this topic, the memories of what replaced it would be vague and the documentation would be poor. The divine essence was freed, and Lucifer took it, becoming a god.